them she could still perform blindfolded, even if her audience had dwindled to occasional social workers and the monthly meter reader. "Margaret," Carmen's voice was gentle but firm, "we need to talk about your options." Options. Another soft word for hard truths. Margaret's fingers trembled as she reached for the cabinet door. Behind it, bills had begun to stack up. Not because she couldn't pay them, but because some days the task of opening envelopes felt as insurmountable as breaching the wall her children had built around themselves. "I've been managing just fine," Margaret said, her back still turned. She could hear Carmen settling onto the sofa, the same spot where David had sat 6 months ago, explaining why he needed to be removed from her healthcare proxy. "Changes in the family structure," he'd said, as if they were discussing a business reorganization rather than severing a lifetime of trust. The kettle whistled, and Margaret startled. She'd forgotten she'd put it on earlier, before losing an hour staring at her phone's empty notification screen. As she poured the hot water over tea bags, her mind wandered to last Thanksgiving, the last time all 3 children had been together under her roof. There had been tension then, though she hadn't recognized it as the precursor it was. Sarah had questioned her investment choices, suggesting she'd been careless with her retirement planning. Michael, her youngest, had remained suspiciously quiet during the discussion, tapping away at his phone. And David, her firstborn, had exchanged loaded glances with his wife whenever Margaret mentioned the grandchildren. "The thing is," Carmen was saying as Margaret returned with the tea, "there are programs designed specifically for seniors in your situation. Financial assistance, community support." "My children are very successful," Margaret interrupted, a reflex she couldn't seem to break. "David's law firm just made him partner. Sarah's tech startup was featured in Forbes, and Michael—" She trailed off, realizing she didn't actually know what Michael was doing now. He'd changed jobs recently, she thought, but the details were as hazy as the fog creeping across her front lawn. Carmen set her untouched tea aside. "Success doesn't always translate to support, Margaret, and there's no shame in accepting help from other sources." The shame, Margaret wanted to say, wasn't in accepting help. It was in needing it when she'd raised 3 children who lived within an hour's drive. The shame was in checking Facebook to see pictures of her grandchildren at parks she'd never been invited to visit. The shame was in pretending, every Sunday at church, that her children were just too busy with their own lives to attend, rather than admitting they'd